All right.
All right, we're live, huh?
Nice. Are we on live on Facebook?
It is. It says connecting live video, which is not what it said 2 seconds ago. So hopefully,
That's promising.
Yeah, that's promising. I haven't seen it, the image come through yet, but that's very promising that that's changed over.
All right. So for anybody that will be watching or that catches this feed on some kind of delay, I'm Sean from Draft Therapy, and I have Peter from Beard's Brewery. Peter, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you doing today?
Not too bad, besides maybe a little bit of nerves, making sure this whole thing works out. We're trying to do this thing where we're both live on YouTube, on the Draft Therapy YouTube site, and then also live on Facebook on Beard's Brewery website. So we'll see. This is a learning experience for both of us.
I'm still showing connecting on my end, but yeah, I think, it's a fun, interesting time where there's a lot of people trying new things. I think this is cool because it's something that we probably wouldn't have thought to do, a month ago. And so I think it's always great when we can try some new things. All right, I haven't seen it fire yet on my end. Let me just check. I'm going to check a setting while we're here.
All right, and in the meantime, John from Sombeer says this stream needs more beards.
Awesome. Well, that's a good comment for sure. And that's, you've reviewed 2 of our beers now, so that's kind of where you caught us on our radar, and we were like, oh, okay, we should do this. So, what I think I'm going to do real quick here is just grab your YouTube link and throw that up on our Facebook page so folks have that. Because It looks like I'm not quite getting, I don't know if it's just on my end, but I'm not seeing it take off. So for those that might be interested, I'm going to go ahead and throw that link in. So let's see me typing a little bit fast here, but.
Yeah, and I'm gonna bring up my keyboard too, and I'm gonna just ask you something real quick in the private, because we might be able to just rig it up and have it go live right now.
Oh yeah, I get what you're saying. So while we're working through some of this technical too, anybody that's watching, hopefully you're cracking a beer. We're about to do that in a minute, and then we'll find out what you're drinking as well, so we can talk about a few different things.
Oh, gotta turn that around. I want it to be a mystery.
Yeah, you're giving it all away. Here, let me.
I may have just given it away.
All right, I'm popping into our creator studio so I can get a stream key.
And hopefully everybody out there that's watching brought a beer to share, or at least to talk about a little bit, and hopefully we'll be able to get to some of that. And yeah, hopefully you have any questions. We're going to try this out and see what we can get here. Oh, I got to get my keyboard out one more time. And if you're maybe already drinking something, let us know in the comments.
Yeah, please throw in what you're drinking in the comments. This way if we've heard of it, if we got thoughts, we'll definitely be throwing them out there. So.
This is I don't know, creative thinking under pressure, I think.
Yeah.
Something like that. Okay.
It was interesting because it said it was connecting when we very first started, and then it kind of quit. So I'm just curious what's going on with that.
Yeah, I can't add it without using your credentials, so I don't want to get that from you over here. All right.
Well, I'll just do. I'm going to share that YouTube link. I threw it in the comments of our Facebook, but I'll go ahead and throw it in a new post real quick too, so that anybody that's interested can just stream along with us.
All right, so you're the guest, I guess, since this is going on YouTube. You're the guest right now I'll let you go ahead and you can share with us first what you're drinking or what you will be drinking.
All right. Give me 1 sec because I'm just throwing this link up.
Oh, okay. Well, then I will show.
Yeah.
I'll show everybody what I'm doing. And we're going to go a little bit of a close up here. The big reveal. This is Forklifts Are for Mitches. This is a collaboration between Adam Brewing and Speciation. Adam is in Erie, Colorado. You can find out more about them at adambrewingcompany.com, and also Speciation over on the west side of the state. They are known, if you're not familiar with Speciation, they're known for doing sours, mostly sours. They have some other stuff that they do, but they're mostly sours. And this is a little bit out of, Peter and I had talked about doing this, and we decided to just kind of bring something that we've had sitting around that we haven't gotten a chance to try it. And this was one that I'd had sitting under this bar for about, I don't know, probably about a year. I think this came out about a year ago. And I decided this would be the time to crack it. It's not really something that I would normally go for, but it sounds pretty interesting. So I figured, why not? This is 7% alcohol by volume and batch number 1.
Sometimes it's best to dive into something that you're not sure if it's the right time. I often think about that movie Sideways. He's like saving. Have you seen that? He's saving his bottle, and then at the end, he's like drinking it in a McDonald's or something, like out of paper cups. Maybe not the best example of what you want to be doing, but
I think that we treat beer. I was thinking about this yesterday. I think we treat beer really preciously sometimes, like overly preciously, and it's made to be enjoyed. So might as well.
And sometimes then you don't ever get to it, and then it just gets it gets out of spec or whatnot. So all right. Do you want to crack yours and then I crack mine, or?
This is the first time that I can remember ever opening a beer with a cage. So you can talk about it, and I'll work on this.
Okay, you work on that.
All right.
So I originally was going to dig something old out of my fridge, which I probably should have done because we talked about that. But then I saw this guy who I wanted to give a little attention. It's our Brimley Stout. So it's older in that we've been making this beer for a while, but this is the first time we've ever canned it, of course, right here in the winter, mid-season release. And then things got kind of dicey, but these cans are out there in limited supplies. So our artist did just a phenomenal job with this. As you can see, it's inspired by Wilford Brimley, reminiscent of a tiny oatmeal can, full-bodied oatmeal stout that's robust and rich in flavor, dark and roasty with a creamy finish. It's the right thing to do and the tasty way to do it. I'm going to go ahead and give that a crack.
That's an awesome looking can, by the way.
Thank you. Shout out to our artist, Steve Bartell, does a great job with our can arts, and he's been doing about can art for about the last year with us.
Yeah, I really like when I first saw Copper Star, I was like, that's a really interesting, like, I didn't realize it was you guys at first because you had like that similar art style and then kind of went and changed, and now they're all kind of they're all a little bit different.
Yes, we've kind of kept some of the can like key features. They always kind of have the band at the bottom with the name, our logo here, our little flag on the back. So we tried to keep a little bit of that element, but we've worked with different artists over the years, and when we brought someone on full time to help us kind of in our art department, so to speak, we didn't want to hamstring him and say, hey, you have to do art that is, looks exactly like what we were doing before, Right. We wanted to give him some creative space to work. So it's been fun to explore that and brainstorm with him and really do some more in-depth stuff on our cans.
So this, I don't know if I mentioned what the style was. This is a barrel-aged golden sour ale with cranberries. And I think the cranberries really are what kind of gave it this rich kind of color to it, because I was not expecting it to be this dark, of like a reddish, kind of brownish, pinkish color.
Yeah, that's pretty.
Smells good. Smells sour, that's for sure. Like I said, this isn't always the style that I go for. If I was normally going to drink a beer just after work or whatever, I don't think it'd be a sour. It's not usually my thing, but why not? Wow, that's pretty sour. That is, whoa, it's good, but it's really sour. Get a lot of that farmhousey kind of hay, funky, acidic kind of thing going on, but it's not too acidic. It's not too like, I don't know. It doesn't have like a really dry, just acidic kind of biting bitterness. It's just sour. It's got a nice sourness to it. It's got a nice bit of that grassy kind of hay kind of quality, a lot of farmhousey kind of quality. I don't get, I do get a little bit of cranberry, and that probably adds to the puckerness, because it's like that first taste is just like my face. I thought it was going to suck in all the way, but yeah, it's pretty good. It's definitely interesting.
What is it? Does it say what the culture is that they use?
I don't think it does. This is like, it's weird because this is in the style of a speciation bottle, and I don't know if that's. Oh, so here's the description. It says this beer is inspired by Mitch's long journey from Colorado to Michigan on his forklift. Some say he drove it the whole way. Others say the forklift has magical powers and flew high above your peasant minds. To this day, tales of his journey are told to young, wide-eyed brewers while standing around barrel stacks. Many say they are simply fairy tales. Some claim to have witnessed them firsthand. All we know for sure is that the legend of Mitch and his forklift will forever live in the darkest cobweb-covered corners of the barrel rooms around the world. And that's Adam Brewing Company, Funk Factory. Is that Goozeria? And then, yeah, that's all it really says. I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes online. What I find is, like for a lot of times Brettanomyces as a yeast, is used in sours, but with like really souring bacteria too. And sometimes they play out more just the Brettanomyces, and then you get that kind of more farmhouse dry without so much mouth puckering sour. I always kind of like that. I'm going to take a sip of this because I got to get my mouth wet. Here's this. We use a lot of oatmeal in this, so on the nose, it's just like, smells almost like a bowl of oatmeal with like a little bit of roast characteristic. Oh, yeah.
Give yourself that milk mustache.
Yeah. I love that. Because I had a couple of these. I had this last night, and my wife had made a lamb stew, and we were eating that, and like a nice hearty stew or something just really pairs with that roast in this beer. Really nice. It's a little bit. It's got a sweetness to it from the residuals in the oatmeal. But then it kind of finishes with that drier roast malt flavor. So good winter beer for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Spring is on the horizon, but I don't know. For me, it's not exactly here yet.
Oh, it got up to 70 here today. So the windows are open. I didn't have to turn my space heater on in my office, and it was nice. I could just kind of relax and not have to worry about freezing to death.
We were still, 43 was our high today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's on its way then.
Yeah, it's amazing how much difference there can be. So,
checking back in with chat, Peace Channel says when we asked what they were drinking, Tired Hands Alien Church. John says he's drinking water. I kind of flashed this one up earlier. Mike Levine says, glad to see someone else say sour is not usually my thing. Got Dave Vanderhoff says, what's up? Drinking Father of All Photobombs, which is from District 96. They're out of New York.
Okay.
And Dave actually sent one of those my way, and it was, wow. It was really good. It's a triple New England style or a triple Northeastern style. I still don't know why some places call it Northeastern and some places call it New England. I've noticed the couple New York beers that Dave sent along say Northeastern, but they're New England style. And I'm wondering if it's like a New York thing or New York, New Jersey thing. They're like, yeah, we're not we're not really New England. I mean, technically, but we don't want to be called that. I don't know if it's just a thing or not.
Yeah. Interesting. I get what you're saying there.
So how are you guys coping with all this craziness that's going on around the world? Well, especially around the state.
It's wild, right? I mean, that's we jumped on here trying to figure out how to do live broadcasts with multiple people to multiple streams. I mean, we're trying to do new things, and to an extent, I sit here and think, it's a good kick in the ass, so to speak, right? Like, hey, like figure out how to innovate, but at the same time, that's just really hard for a lot of people. So we're still doing like to go and delivery in our local area. We've been able to keep a minimal staff going with that. We collect it's managers pretty much working, so we collect all the tips and give them to our laid off staff. Fortunately, with some of the federal relief, that helps a lot with the unemployment, but it's scary to not be able to tell people that are like your family, like when can you come back, right?
Yeah.
So that's the hardest part for sure. We've seen, unfortunately, a huge part, being a pretty small brewery, still a huge part of getting our beer out there is in draft. And with all that drying up, that's eaten into our wholesale business as well. So we have seen some of the cans pick up a little bit more, but it's hard when you take such a big chunk of what you do and replace it overnight with, off premise, as we call the can sales. So,
yeah. Well, it's cool to hear that you guys can do delivery. I think that's kind of tough. I know it's got to be really tough logistically, to figure out what's the radius that you guys are delivering to. I know it's probably, it's not as dense as down here. I know a lot of places around here are like 20 miles max, depending on how much you spend, stuff like that. Yeah,
we started with like the zip code 49770, which is like the zip code of our pub, and we found that became kind of troublesome because there's all these lakes and up here, so you like go, okay, that's not that far, but you have to go around the lake to get there, or so we've dialed it back a little bit. I would say it's probably closer to like a 5-mile radius. It was just hard to get it to people and keep quality up and freshness when you're driving all over, and we don't have like an army of delivery people. We have one person doing deliveries and whatnot, but we felt it was important to be able to add that aspect to it, because some people can't go out or are more vulnerable, or need to quarantine because they've been traveling, and so being able to offer that, it's been interesting. I think that at first we were like, how essential is this? But with the way our food and society has gone, like so many people are used to eating out, that they're not used to cooking all their meals at home. And it's like a big mental boost to be able to know they can still order something, and get it. And so people have been really appreciative, and it's been awesome to see that they're happy with what we're doing. And it makes us feel like it's definitely the right thing to do.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. It's not, it's something you kind of take for granted. I'm kind of a little bit of a loner anyways, so it's the being home aspect hasn't been that big of an issue, but it's the part where, maybe not being able to go every once in a while to the place that you like to go. Like you said, family is asking you when you're opening up, and I'm sure for you guys, with it being probably a pretty tight knit community, right, for beards. Yeah. So, that's got to be almost like that is your family, the regular customers that come in, the mug clubbers that come in that you can't see until, some unknown point in the future. So it's got to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, no, I'm right with you. Personally, I have a home office. I do some of my work at home anyways, just with the nature of the business. But yeah, when you can't go out once in a while, or you can't, it's just a little, there are like pain points in it, even if you're someone that likes to be at home a fair amount. So,
it's nice to have the option.
Yeah. And I have a cousin, or lots of cousins. I have a pretty big family, and, some of them are, used to a lot more extroverted. So I know quite a few extroverts, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And it's been extra hard. So trying to stay in touch with people is good. And we actually hosted an exchange student this year. So that was tough. They canceled school, and a high school exchange student. So I had to send him back and everything. And they just kept canceling his flights. And then we were worried, like, what if he gets stuck in the middle of the country somewhere at some big airport with his flights canceled? So, but he made it safely, and we got a chance to do a video call with him this morning. So that was good.
Yeah, all these big, I haven't really had too many issues. For me personally, I don't work much from home, but at this point, a lot of working from home. I don't find it that it's hard to stay motivated. I just feel like I'm more productive when I'm not here. Like if I'm at the office or something, I feel like I get a lot more work done, where maybe I don't, but it's just the illusion of being somewhere else. You feel like, hey, I went someplace else. I got in the car and I drove somewhere. I did something. Not so much happening right now, unfortunately. But, like I said, I'm usually pretty happy with being at home. So it hasn't been too much of a problem. With family, stuff, I do envy people that say, I do envy a little bit the people that say, oh yeah, I binge watched all these shows. There's like a zillion shows I want to watch and I can't. Me personally, I don't get a chance to watch them. Maybe that's me being selfish.
No, I'm there with you. I've said that. I'm like, I feel kind of bad saying this, but it's like, I have so much work to do. And I also don't really get paid for it, because it's like, if we're shut down, but that doesn't mean I can stop working on it, right? So I'm like, man, I wish I was just playing video games all day. I'm sure if I got to that point, then I'd be like, I want to get back in and do something.
Yeah, let me get out of here.
Yeah. I don't know. Okay. Unless you had something.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, if you guys have questions you have for us, get them ready. And we'll also kind of go back through if you cracked anything else since we started. If there's any other beers you want to talk about. But I just wanted to check in. Brett here, fellow Michigander. I'm glad, that's what I'm here for, Brett. Hopefully I'm able to give you guys some good information on some good beers.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was going to say, I don't know if you've done this much on your channel, but I've watched a handful of reviews, and I thought it might be interesting just to learn a little bit about how you got rolling with this draft therapy.
Yeah, I've said it here and there. I kind of like pepper little pieces of information throughout, some videos, but generally I keep it straight to business. But yeah, so my first experiences with beer, craft beer in particular, weren't necessarily great, because I, was young and overindulged and got a little sick, and took a break from beer for quite a while. My first beer, craft beer that I had, was a Sam Adams. It was a Golden Pilsner. And that was that was when I was in college and tried it. And I was, at the time I thought that, I hadn't really drank much before college. So it wasn't something where, you start to understand that it takes a long time for you to kind of actually start feeling it. And just kind of overindulged a little bit that first time, turned me off for a really long time. And then kind of got back into craft beer, got a couple friends that, we all kind of got into it together. And then my weight got really kind of inflated. I was up to near 300 pounds, and then I quit drinking, lost almost 100 pounds. I probably, now with gaining some back, I'm probably 70 pounds or so. And then I wanted to learn I've always been really interested in video editing and cameras and photography, but just never, I wanted to do video editing, but I didn't want to edit other people's stuff. I wanted to create my own content and just, play with it. It's more fun when you do it with your own stuff, right? Rather than somebody else's. And I wanted to create the stuff, and I wanted to do the whole thing front to back. And I was starting to get back into craft beer, and that was a thing that I was just really kind of wanted to, test out. I saw other people doing it, not saying that other people weren't doing really good jobs, but I thought that I could bring my own perspective. I have a lot of experience. If you cut out all the times that I stopped drinking, I probably have a good 10 years experience with, different craft beers and beers in general. So, and I had done some home brewing in the past, just one-offs here and there. And yeah, I just figured let's get into it, and started making videos and started, I think the thing that's really interesting, and talking to you, I mean, you're in Petoskey, right? That's where you're located right now.
Yeah.
So, there's all this stuff, just Michigan. I kind of started focusing just on Michigan because I'd rather honestly get teeth pulled than go to the post office or go to UPS. That's like the worst. I can't, I just don't want to do that. So, I figured it'd be the easiest just because we get beer here. Obviously, there's there were 250 to 300 breweries or whatever it was at the time I started. And I figured there's just so many good options. We had Founders, we had Bell's, we had Shorts, we had Oddside, we had, those are just a few that I could think of off the top of my head when I started. And I knew I'd seen stuff here and there, like, oh, that place is from Michigan, this place is from Michigan. And I'd started going to breweries near my house and was just really interested in the whole scene. And when you go to a brewery or you go to a tap room, and I usually sit at the bar, it's always interesting. Somebody will come up, they'll come in off the street, they'll sit at the bar. They might be a regular someplace, they might not be, but there's always a conversation that you can strike up. And being, somewhat introverted myself, it's kind of, there's always that trepidation, but there's almost always some interesting story, either from the person working there, or maybe you see like the owner or the brewer might come out and tell you about something. So it was just an interesting thing. I wouldn't have to trade with anybody. I wouldn't have to go to the post office. I could talk about Michigan beer because there's so many really great beers here. That's really, what made me decide to start doing this, is getting into video editing, doing the special effects, the After Effects stuff, photography. And it was already something I liked to do. I already liked, I was already doing this as a hobby anyways. So why not just kind of go to the next level and start putting these videos out and kind of raising the awareness of just Michigan beer in general. I do out-of-state stuff every once in a while, but the focus is always Michigan. It probably always will be, because there's, like I said, there's so many breweries. There's always something new. You're never going to get bored with the beer here, because there's always something.
Yeah, it'd be shocking to get bored with the beer here. That's a great story, and I think that's not that different than starting a brewery to a certain extent, because we were home brewers. I first started liking craft beer, and then started brewing craft beer at home, and then kind of said, well, why not take it to the next level, so to speak. So I think that kind of resonates a lot of creative people. We actually have a show. I just see a comment here about our beer, Luna and Armadillo. Haven't seen anything after. I'd love to know what your local beer story is as well. We can follow up there. Luna is a wheat saison, and Armadillo is our bigger IPA, uses all Mosaic and Amarillo hops. And I do talk about that a little. I did a couple live streams by myself here this week and a half ago, just kind of talking about some of our beers. So I do talk about that. But we started a channel called What's Your Craft Show, and that's on YouTube now. And that kind of gets into a little bit what you were talking about, like where people fall into something because they love it and they're passionate about it, right? That's how we fell into beer, my business partner and I. So we were passionate about it, and there was also at the time a void in the market. I mean, there wasn't much up in northern Michigan. It was short, and like Sheboygan had opened like the year before, and there was nothing else. So like our closest brewery was 50 minutes, which now seems like a joke, right? Like, you can't hardly drive down the street without stumbling on a beer. But I think that the motivations and the things that drive people in different disciplines can also be very similar.
For sure.
So that's kind of what our show's about, like, because we found just out of our own love for what we do. And I did a semester through my college that was focused on film, and I'd always been interested in film and video and that type of equipment and post-production. But like you said, I wasn't interested necessarily in just editing other people's stuff. So that's where we kind of launched our show, and it's more like podcast format in that longer time periods. But if you watch, we also put it out in audio only, but if you watch it, it's cool because we try to focus on a lot of people that have really visual aspects to what they do. So then we can throw those in.
Yeah, I was going to say they're more kind of long form. They're like, it's basically, well, I know that you guys have done several different things, and it's kind of, it's like an interview format, right? Where you interviewing, like the most recent one you had, I forgot who it was, but you were interviewing
Mary B. Art. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, Mary B. Art, and it's really cool what she does, because she does painting is her primary thing, but she does like logos for people, and she does like jewelry and like mini little tiny paintings that could be like ornament style things. I think it's cool. That's the cool part too with a lot of people we've talked to. How do you take something you love to the next level, like you were talking about? How do you make a business out of it? Or even if it's not a full-fledged business, how do you make it a little bit more than a hobby? Or maybe you're doing it not as your sole job, but you find a way to make a little income to support your hobby or something like that.
I need to figure that part out.
That part you're working on.
Right.
But usually that's hard real early on, right? I mean, you have to build a little bit of base for it.
Yeah,
but I think you're doing a lot of the things right that I would say, like putting something out that's quality, doing something that people have an interest in, but is also something that is authentic to you, right? You're not just doing it to feed people something that you think is going to be the most popular. And that's always for us is authenticity has been one of our core values, like doing something we care about, right? And I know that's expressed in different ways in different companies, but for us, it's not just about making $1. It's about doing what we care about, but then also figuring out how to make $1 so we can make it sustainable. So yeah, the Mary B. Art episode is really cool. I love what she does. She's traveled a lot, and we talk about that on her episode, and that makes how that informs her visual style. It's interesting that the traveling she'd done and like the history she'd had with art from like her grandparents even had stained glass studio. And if you start looking at her stuff, you can see a lot of that impact in the visuals. So
yeah, I was listening to part of it, and she was talking about like how the waves in Hawaii were different than the waves, other places. And I was like, that makes sense, but that's just kind of, I would never have, thought something. Sometimes you have to look at something from a different perspective to be able to see all the little, details about something like that.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff that you just kind of pass by and you're like, you just kind of take it for granted. But when you, for lack of a better term, stop and smell the roses, or maybe stop and look at the waves, sometimes you pick up things that you may have missed.
No, I think that's definitely the case. And we talked in there a little bit about naming things and how sometimes because we thought of like a tree as a tree, you walk by trees and you just have this idea of what a tree is. You don't really observe it, right? But if you're going to create something out of it, you have to put a little more intentionality and time into it. I see we got some comments on another beer here, so maybe we should talk about that.
So first off, Robert, who mentioned that he hadn't seen anything else from you guys, he is in, he said Mason Monster Beverage in Mason, Michigan. That's the store. That's his local store.
I'll have to do a little bit of digging on that, Robert, and maybe we can make sure we feed a little bit more to there. We're really new in, and I'm just pulling up Mason here because I'll be honest, I grew up in northern Michigan, so I know I know where very little is further south. Yeah, okay, so your area is going to be a newer territory for us. So we just launched this last fall in Southeast Michigan, and it looks like he's going to be kind of on that line. He might have been covered by a previous distributor, but we haven't been in like the Lansing area either very long. So I know when
I picked up Copper Star, it was in like Mackinac City. So I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, Mackinac, we do a lot. We're a lot better coverage up north where we're from. But, if you guys find stuff like us, the best thing you can possibly do is tell your local store, hey, I want more of this. Or can you see if these guys have anything else? Because distributors listen to that then, So if the store says, hey, I got customers asking for this, they're likely going to order it. And now that we do cover those territories, have your local store go right on our website. There's a link for retailers can click on there, and there's a map, and it'll show them. They know their distributors. It'll tell them which one of their distributors carries us in their territory. And so we are statewide now. Last year, late in the year, that's when we finally filled every county out. So we're pretty excited to have that extra footprint and be growing the brand in a time where things are still pretty tight. So I definitely attribute that to loyal customers, people that love what we're doing. And for us, it's always been about building that fan base, you know, people that really care and want to track along with you rather than the one-time buy. So it takes longer. It takes more heart. I mean, I've done a ton of festivals myself. I have a full-time rep, and she works all over the state. And I still go out as much as I can to bigger festivals events or show up at the random bar tasting that. And so you never know where you'll find me. If you're going to a beards event, there's a chance I'll be there. But there'll always be a beard person there, because we don't commit to an event if it's just going to be our distributors repping us. For us, it's really important that we have one of our home staff there if we're doing it. Otherwise, we just say we can't do the event.
Yeah. And if you do see Peter there, make sure you say hi.
Yeah.
Let him know. Yeah. So we had Peace channels. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, make sure you tell me you saw us here.
Yeah.
On Draft Therapy.
That's what I say that when I say, you know, if you go to the tap room and you try this beer out, or if you're a regular, just let them know you saw the beer here.
Yeah.
Peace channel says, has anyone had Founder's Devil Dancer? He scored a keg from his local pub, and they sell kegs from inventory direct to customers. Have you had that one before?
It's been a long time, as I recall, and I just pulled it up here again, and I recall correctly. That's quite the keg to have.
That's like a triple, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a 12% Imperial IPA, big beer. So you talk about sneaking up on you earlier. You got to be careful with that one, but yeah, that's a good one. I can't speak much to the details of it because it's been years since I've had it, but
yeah, they were selling it out of their Detroit tap room, and it happened right before all this started going on. And then I was like, I should go pick that. I think it was a Mothership release there. I could be wrong, but I thought it was a Mothership that they released out of the tap room, and I thought I should really go pick that up. And then, you know, everything kind of hit the fan and didn't get a chance. So we have a few people checking in with their takes on Devil Dancer. I've heard it's great. I've never had it. That's one of the blind spots for me. Yeah, P says he couldn't believe the price. It was $150 for a quarter. That's
Are you
not
believing
cheap.
that's good or bad though? I mean, a quarter of 12% beer, that's a hefty beer, but yeah, but you can get a lot of half barrels in that range of like regular beers. So
yeah. So we have Brett checking back in. He says, personally, I've had, he's been wanting the Dogman after my review. Has anyone tried that one? I've had it. It's good. When was that canned?
Okay, let me think. We probably November. Late November. So we were shooting for a early to late November because we were shooting to get it to distributors in December was kind of the goal.
Okay.
And that was the first time we've done that. Again, we'd been messing with that recipe for the last couple of years, various levels of smoke, various levels of whatnot, different types of smoked malt. Like we were dialing it in, and then Breeze is where we buy all our malt, came out with 3 types of smoked malt: cherrywood smoked malt, mesquite smoked malt, and I can't remember the last one, but or hickory smoked malt. So we were like, oh boy, now we got to play with those a little. So we ended up actually using cherrywood smoked malt in that beer. And we found that with the yeast we use, you get a little bit of fruitiness, and that cherrywood smoke, we really were trying to find something that wasn't too smoky. Because I struggle with like drinking liquid campfire, right? Like Dogman, and this is the thing that with most of our beers, we call them like 6-pack beers, right? We want it to be something people will buy and enjoy a whole 6-pack of. So, this is the first winter though that we've canned that. We've been, like I said, playing with draft iterations in the pub for the last couple of years, but trying to kind of build that as a winter seasonal. It's a Northern Michigan legend. So.
Right. Yeah. I read that he only shows up every 10 years.
Yeah. We're going to try to make the beer available every year, but
buck the trend with the beer, but let the legend be every 10 years. The beer can be every year.
Right. You only have to worry about getting mauled by him once every 10 years. In the off years, you just enjoy the beer.
That's right. We had a couple people check back in and say that that Double Dancer was a Mothership release. And then we got a question: is Beards Michigan only right now?
Yes, we are Michigan only. And again, if you go to our website, you can go to the retailer tab, and we have I think it's under contact retailers. It shows the distributors, so that doesn't really help you guys, unfortunately. Being small, it's hard to get a location finder. We've looked at a lot of details for that, but quite a bit of expensive software integrating with distributors and partnering, and so it's kind of hard. But Michigan only, and just finally Southeast Michigan last fall. So that, ironically, we were in 75% of the state and only available to about half the population. So now we're in the rest of it and available to everybody. So.
Yeah, I started seeing, I think I mentioned in the review, I see, is it the Citranity? And maybe Armadillo that I would see somewhat infrequently down here. Like the store that I go to generally, if I want to kind of pick up stuff that might not be available anywhere else in this, in Southeast Michigan, I'll go to 8 Degrees Plato in Detroit, and they seem to get everything just about. But that's where I went and I saw Dogman. And like I said before that, I have started to see some other stuff kind of pop up here and there. I'll go to a place in Royal Oak Holiday Market. They usually have a pretty good selection. Okay. They're kind of another place that gets a lot of beers that you might not find necessarily, at your corner store or at certain, there's some of those bottle shops that they might be really heavy on one distributor, but they might not get everything from every distributor. Right. But Holiday Market in Royal Oak and 8 Degrees in Detroit, in Southeast Michigan, are two of the places that I know that I've seen a lot of beard stuff.
Yeah, 8 Degrees Plato, they have, is it 2 or 3 locations? Ferndale is one of them.
They had 2. Yeah, they had Ferndale in Detroit, and they closed Ferndale last summer, I think. Maybe even earlier.
They got our stuff a little bit ahead of everyone else because we, before we actually opened the market, self-distribution came on, and so we went down there and self-distributed just to a couple select stores to test the waters and learn about the market a little bit more, and they were one of the stores. So they've been getting stuff for a little bit longer, and that's a great store. They really care about it. They care about what they're getting in, and they try to get the limited releases and the specialties and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I was just going to say, we kind of break our calendar. We have our core beers, and then now we do seasonal, and then we have like the Brimley Stout is like a one time. So we send one allocation to distributors, and that's what they get. So
that, I know that I was looking for Transient's Neckbeard Nectar, which is I think it's a milk stout. It might be a collaboration too. And 8 Degrees was the place that I found it a week or so, maybe a week or two before I started seeing it pop up in limited quantities other places. So it was a nice kind of treat when I went in and I picked up Dogman and a few other ones to be able to find, something like that. Just because sometimes I feel with craft beer, sometimes if you see it and you're interested, you should pick it up because it might not show up to this place. It might not show up to your regular place. It might not show up somewhere else. So if it's something that you want to get and you see it on the shelf, you probably want to pick it up when you see it because it might not be there next time. Yeah, it's pretty, the back end that most people don't see is how the distributors work. And they're trying to manage a lot of SKUs of product and this and that. And so you could
when you get into more populated areas, like for us, we have multiple distributors in Southeast Michigan. So you might be in this county and that same beer might not be available in the county next door because that distributor, that didn't fit their portfolio, right? So it's kind of, we try to work with our distributors pretty well and not force product on them. We want them to carry everything, but at the same time, if they don't have a heart to sell it, we'd rather push it somewhere that the territory wants it, right? Because we want it to go and we want it to be fresh. So.
And Peach channel checking back in. Hope to try beers at some point. He's a huge Scotch ale fan and he homebrews all the time. Homebrews Scotch ales all the time, but unfortunately he's not going to find it in Maryland.
Bummer. Yeah. Alas, you'd have to get on those beer trading channels that Sean, you're afraid of.
Yeah.
I'm
afraid of. Yeah, I'm afraid of. I don't know. I never know like what something. There's some groups have so many different like rules. This one's worth this, and what's the. You know what I'm saying? I just don't want to deal with that. Like I just rather go. I know, hey, this store might have it for $1 more than that store, but at least I can just like, oh, okay, I'll keep. Oh, that's how much they charge for it here. Oh, they had it for cheaper. Okay, I'll get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'd rather deal with that.
No, I'm right with you. I like simplicity. I'm about drinking the beer, not like spending too much time finding it. Although, again, I find people get into certain hobbies, and I'm sure people would make fun of me for some of my things. I love beer, obviously, that's a hobby too, but I'm not into the whole trading thing. But I think that's cool that there's people that care to do that, and that's something that they enjoy. So.
Do you know, I don't know if you'd know or not, but like with services out there like Tavor, are you familiar with Tavor?
Mm-mm.
It's an app that you get on, I think it's on Android and iOS, and every day, like 2 or 3 times a day, they will put out a new beer, and you can buy, they'll be limited. There might be, some might be like a big, like one of these kind of bottles. It might be a 16-ounce can. And there will be limits, you might, for something like this, you might be able to get 2 and you pay, let's say they might have some special where it's like 2 16-ounce cans. So I got from Toppling Goliath in Iowa, I bought 2 cans of Pseudo Sue, which is their like big pale ale. And it was, I think for 2 16-ounce cans, I paid something like maybe $9. I mean, don't quote me on that. Yeah. And then once those beers come out, once they sell out of the allotment, then if you want the beer, you can go on a wait list. And if they come back at some point, you can get notified. I haven't really got into it much. I just got my first shipment like last week, and I put in for another couple beers recently. But then, so every day, like I said, multiple beers will come out and then they flat ship everything. I was just wondering how like a brewery even gets involved with that, because a lot of it is like, some of them are pretty big breweries that people are really chasing, like Anchorage Brewing in Alaska, or you might see Toppling Goliath, or, I think I've seen places that I've heard of. They're not all just kind of everywhere that I've never heard of, but some of them are kind of like legit beers. That one that I just recently put an order in for was Lunch from Maine Brewing, and the only problem is that you can like set when your cart closes, so you can continually buy beer, and then once the cart closes at a specified date, then it's $14 flat shipping, and they send you the box all packaged up, and you get your beer. You have to sign for it because it's 21 and over kind of thing. But I was just wondering how a brewery even gets involved in something like that.
I just Googled it here. And I don't know. I'd have to look into it. I've seen a few different ones. The unfortunate thing with the way our system works here in the U.S., every state has its own system for and set of laws for beer and liquor and wine, and usually they're all different. And I struggle to understand how some of those services actually work, legally. But I think also sometimes people do things for a while before there's any problem.
Yeah, right.
So I think sometimes that's how it works.
They operate in the gray a little bit.
Yeah, there's kind of like, okay, well, like this state allows shipping alcohol, but this one doesn't. But what if I'm shipping from this one to that one, right? Like it's originating here, or and I would love to see. Usually, I'm kind of not to get political, but I kind of like like local government being able to make some rules. But that's the type thing that I feel like that's like the federal government should kind of step in and say like, whoa, we're trying to sell between states. Like here's the rule book, right? So to speak, whatever it is, let's have a rule book to work by. So I'm not sure how to get involved. I do know there are some Michigan breweries with different exchanges like that. I've heard of a few other ones. So there's probably a way to do it. I'll have to dig around.
There's a way.
Yeah.
We got DJ Eric checking in, liking the beards. He has one since he's been out of work for a month, and he misses having a beard. How did you guys come up with beards? Like, did you have a beard the whole time, and you're like, yeah, or how did you guys come up with the name?
Yeah, I've had a beard for a long time, a lot smaller beard I started with, but the name, so we opened in 2012. We were putting a lot of this plan together in 2011, and we were looking at a list of ideas for names, and one of my cousins had suggested beards with like 2 E's, kind of as a pun, like beard. And I felt like I liked the idea, but I wasn't sure I wanted to take after the pun route. So I was like, all right, let's just call it beards. I was like, I feel like it's sort of a thing people in the industry have often. And
I've noticed.
And we were looking around, and at the time there was about 100 maybe breweries in the state, and like 2,200 in the nation. And name wasn't taken. So we were like, we had like probably a list of 100 names, and it was, okay, that's stupid, this one's taken, that one, because you start bumping in when the industry's exploding, start bumping into, oh yeah, people had that idea already. But so we went after it and said, awesome, let's do it. I had a friend who was an artist. I was like, can you make us a logo? He knocked it out of the park. So I got it right there on my shirt. Well, this camera is in reverse, so I really struggle to look at it and point in the right spot. But yeah, that's kind of how it came about, just organically brainstorming and seeing what was available, and then saying, I think this makes sense for us.
Do you remember any off the top of your head that were ones that failed the Turing test?
Oh boy, that'd be hard. I probably still have a list somewhere, but I can't tell you. This one like kind of rose to the top, so other things sort of like just fell away. I know we had some. I can't remember what it was. One that it wasn't Dark Horse, but it had like horse kind of in the name. And then we were like, oh, there's Dark Horse is too big already to come and step on any kind of horse name. I just remember that because I kind of remember bumping against that particular obstacle. But yeah, I couldn't quote you what they were right now.
When you guys come up with a beer name,
yeah,
I know there's several steps like kind of involved for you to for you to be able to package it, right? Like the label has to be approved by the state. I know that there are some places that, like I think Bell's just had an issue recently where they have Deer Camp through Upper Hand. Upper Hand makes a beer called Deer Camp, and I think there was some kind of controversy or possible like lawsuit based on some other brewery called like Deer Camp Brewing, or I don't know all the specifics of the thing, but how have you guys ever bumped into anything where a name of a beer or a label that you guys wanted to put out was already like being put out by somebody else, or there was some kind of legal question over, your right to use it?
Yeah, I'll talk to that in 1 second. I see there's a question about where to find Dogman. A great thing to do would be if you hit up our Facebook and shoot us a message, or even better, just like sales@beardsbrewery.com. Because I don't have all the places down in my head, but I can get you that information. So I'd be happy to follow up with you on that. As far as issues with labeling, definitely we've bumped into a few things. I mean, some of it is we all have a lot of different passions or things that we love and growing up, and you want to like kind of play off them, like say a video game or a movie that you really loved. And you also have to find that line of what's like playing off it and what's too close. And then we've bumped into some things like we had a beer, Grizzly Adams, and we ran that for a long time. And this is a hilarious story because like that beer is really expensive to make. It was like a double IPA, had a ton of really big hops in it. And we canned it for just like 2 years as like a one-time release, like I was telling you, in the summer. So maybe put out 400 cases of it, 24 cans a case. Not a ton of it ever released. A draft staple in our pub, but so we got a cease and desist from the Grizzly Adams lawyers, and they had gotten a can in Oregon of all places. We don't distribute out of the state. We maybe put 400 cases out. Someone had a can out there, took a picture of it, and that's what they saw, right? And we're like, oh, you're stepping on our toes. And we were like, so there's a couple things in copyright law. One thing is we had looked it up, and there was they didn't have like a trademark on Grizzly Adams in the category beer or brewing or brewery or anything like that, because there's categories for trademarks. So we kind of felt like we were safe, but then there's something called the fame clause. If you're famous enough, you don't need to get all the categories. So we're like, oh, okay. So we learned a lesson there, right? They were very cool about it. We're like, we'll stop calling it that. We didn't mean to step on your toes type deal. But you learn, and so after that, we've been doubly cautious, more like checking in. We always Googled things, right? We were really conscientious of not, even if it wasn't trademarked, not trying to name after what another brewery had, because we didn't want to step on another Michigan guy's toes or actually cause confusion in the market, right?
Right.
So I think that the more and more breweries there are, the harder it is to come up with names. So there's that side of it too. But I don't know. Got some more comments here, huh?
Yeah, we got Brendan Chang. He says, aside from CBS and KBS, what's your favorite Founders Barrel Aged Series beer? Do you have a favorite?
Boy, I think the Curmudgeon Old Ale is pretty good. I think that one's barrel aged too, right?
The better half.
The better half. Yeah, and I actually have one of those in my fridge because I just saw that when I was poking through here. So I like that. That's, pretty chewy, pretty thick, pretty heavy, but nice. So that might be up there high for me. How about yourself?
I saw his comment earlier and I was thinking, man, that's a good question, because they do, so many of the barrel aged series beers have been really good. I mean, Backwoods Bastard has always been a big favorite. I didn't like it as much when they went year round with it. I haven't had KBS now it's year round either. I really liked, thinking back, I'm like a sucker for some reason for malt liquors. So I really like DKML. I think of malt liquors as being like time machines, right? But you can only go into the future. You can't go in the past with them, unfortunately.
That's funny.
Man, what else? I remember liking Dankwood, but I think the one that really surprised me probably the most of the last couple of years that I did not expect to like at all would be Mas Agave. Like I didn't think that tequila barrel aged, I think that's a Goza. I didn't think that would be like, I mean, it sounds like it might work. And I like tequila barrel aged beers in general. I think the tequila, something, if it's the right style, something about it, if it's done the right way, it can be really good. But I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did. I don't know how well it aged, but yeah, I mean, that was probably like the most surprising and probably like unexpected, really good kind of sneaky beers. And I think I'm not alone. I'm sure a lot of people didn't think much about it and tried it and were really pretty impressed by it.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of that. I did have a taste of it, and definitely, I'm not a tequila person, so I was like, I'm not gonna like this at all. But I definitely thought, oh yeah, I could drink that on a summer afternoon, right?
That's not too bad.
What was I gonna say? Oh, we did a gin barrel aged version of our wheat saison one time, and that was the first time we kind of tried something other than a bourbon barrel, and we got that from Grand Traverse Distillery, and they make like a really citrus heavy botanical mix, and I thought it just turned out great. But the interesting thing about that is we'd never done it before, so we were tasting it every month, and I thought like after the first month it was the best. Like we kept going because we didn't know where it was going to go. And when we put it out, it was good, but it had taken on so much more wood. Whereas in the first month, it had a ton of those like botanical mix from the gin really shining through. So as it aged, more of the oakiness came through. But I think it's fun to play with different barrels. I mean, bourbon has been such a staple that I think a lot of people don't think, what else could we do? I really want to do a red wine barrel, but we haven't done one yet.
Yeah, gin can be interesting because I'm not a huge gin person, but I can see, the right style really lending pretty good with that.
Yeah, well, and that's what I was saying. Like they have, I feel like a less of a piney botanical mix too. So I think depending on what type of barrel you're getting, what the base gin tastes like can affect the beer it's going with too. But with a saison, wheat saison, those type of flavors seem to really work for us. So
going back to the chat, we got one saying I should have a Zoom that the viewers can join in on.
It's a great idea.
Randy, stay tuned because I was thinking about that when I had John Farner from sombeer.com on last Friday, and we did this kind of live stream. I was thinking about that. I just have to make sure that if we go live on YouTube, that I don't have any jokers, and I'm probably just opening myself up to just a bad time with that. But that's something that we're thinking of. Rob says that yeast injection would be a good name for a beer.
There you go.
And I know he's down for the Zoom call or a conference call of some sort.
Good.
John checks in. He is finally done working. He's going to grab a beer.
Oh, good.
And Randy's back. He says, better half. So sweet.
It is.
Oh, Project Pam.
Project Pam. I've not had that.
I haven't either.
I don't even know much about it.
I know the name, and I forgot. John, enlighten us.
Yeah.
Enlighten us. All right, Peter, I got to ask you, do I need to fill this glass up?
I think so, huh? I feel like we're having a good time here. It's up to you, though.
I think I can fill it. If you can fill the time, I'll switch you to single view, and I'll let you.
Yeah.
You have
another beer coming?
Oh my God, I have a refrigerator full of it.
Okay, yeah. Put me on.
I'm prepared.
And then I'll switch to you, and I'll go grab more.
All right, I'll be right back.
All right. Red wine barley. EP says, interesting. Thanks for being engaged, guys. This is awesome. I think it's way more social when we can talk through things that you guys are actually interested in. If you guys have any questions specifically about beards or any of our beers, I'd be happy to chat on those. So we started back in 2012, which I talked about a little bit earlier, and that's a time when the craft things, it was starting to take off, but it hadn't exploded yet. So Project Pam was a barrel-aged black ale with maple that Founders did. That sounds really good. Barrel-aged black ale. I always like Sustenance black beer from Shorts, and they barrel-aged that once. I really like that. But I think, black ale is not a style you see a lot. Another thing we did, occasionally we put out a black IPA, and we use a little bit of coffee from our local roastery. That's a really interesting blend of things. So Imperial Farmhouse Ale aged in a wine barrel sounds good. Yes, that's a great idea, Robert. I really want to get a wine barrel, and we're talking about playing with our Luna is a wheat saison kind of farmhouse. Doing something with that in a barrel we've talked a lot about, so maybe a wine barrel is the right answer to that. I almost wonder if a white wine would make more sense for that, but we've worked with Petoskey Farm and Vineyards. We actually make a cider with them where we bought in all the ingredients and worked with them on it. So they're pretty cool to work with. I'm hoping at some point we can get some of their wine barrels. But I love the ideas here. EP says you've had nothing from us, but you see it all the time at Horrocks. Well, definitely give it a shot. Horrocks is a good place. They tend to get almost everything we put out. So if there's ever anything you're looking for, those guys really jump in. They supported the brand. I think it's an awesome store. Great idea for a store concept. So I appreciate that. Visited Petoskey in 2018. Absolutely beautiful up there. Got to try your beer next time I'm there. 7-hour drive. That is a drive. Boy, you can be out of Michigan in 7 hours. So I wonder where you're hitting there. Michigan's a crazy state. If you start at the bottom and drive up and go out through the UP, you can be like driving in Michigan for like 10, 12 hours. But yeah, Petoskey is beautiful. I appreciate that. We added a couple of years ago. We added a full restaurant. We used to just be a tiny brew pub, and now we have an outdoor patio with views of the bay. So that's pretty good. Massacre Black Ale, Black Lager from Wolverine. I really like black ales, black lagers. It's something I feel like we don't see enough of. A lot of times there's styles I enjoy, but I find like there's not enough consumer demand. So we struggle to make them. Like our black IPA I mentioned is I always love that one, but it tends to be like more select consumers that are into that kind of thing. Oh, Fabian, coming from Northwest Indiana. It sounds about right. 7 hours. Well, it's a great vacation spot, so definitely make it up north. Summers are beautiful. Can't wait for summer to get here. So, ooh, Zach in Denver. Awesome to have you joining. Drinking an unrivaled IPA from Founders. Thoughts on tequila BA beers? We talked about this a little bit. I'm not a tequila person, but we talked about that, and I think it actually worked pretty well. Sean, you had a similar opinion with that?
Oh, yeah. So I found a surprise in my fridge.
Oh.
You know, you talked about some Beards beers. This is by the way, this is a blurb. I'm a collector of old beer. Like, I like to hold on to beer for a long time. This is the first Holmes Blurb Sherbet, which I think they did in late 2018. So I'm going to see how this tastes. But this is another one. This may be a little bit of a blast from the past.
Oh, look, you got that thing. That's what I were talking about. No longer do we make that. You might find it occasionally at the pub called Grizz, but yeah, we're not canning it. So that's pretty cool. Does that have a date on the bottom?
I was looking at that. This says I think it says 1806-27.
Yep. So that would be 18.
How do you think this would drink right now?
Oh boy, it's a great question. Almost 2 years, but I think it would hold up decently. I might have one of those in my fridge too. I don't know if it's it's probably from last year though, not 2 years ago. Give it a shot. It'll be interesting when you see, the other thing we often do is balance it with malt pretty well. Mm-hmm. So I think that helps because you get a little bit more of that barley wine effect. You know, you don't just have the hops kind of getting old, but you have that malt really deepen. Oh boy, how's that?
Very blueberry. Not really sour though. Lots of basil, lots of blueberry.
Basil. That's the type of beer, and I'm not at all like picking on it, but we don't make those type of beers because we find those don't fit our philosophy of like, can I drink a 6-pack of it?
Oh yeah.
And I think it's cool to have those type of options out there. I mean, I'll pick that kind of crazy thing up to drink a can of it for sure. But we're always thinking, how can we make something that is a 6-pack, a good 6-pack?
Yeah. And I wish you guys could see this. There is probably, I don't know,
An inch
a couple
and a half.
centimeters, of sludge in the bottom of this.
That's good.
If I could, I have a knife here. If I didn't think I would cut myself, I would open this up and show you. But
there you go.
I don't want to go to the hospital right now. It's not a good time.
Bad time.
Yeah. Might have other priorities right now.
EPA.
Yeah. Randy says, other small breweries around Michigan. What other small breweries do you really like, and who is killing it? Do you have any smaller, maybe ones that we don't get distribution down here that you like?
Yeah, if you're up our way, there's a tiny one called Beers Inwood, Biers. I think they do a pretty good job for being really small. The guy he was a potter, still does a lot of pottery. I think that's kind of some of his family background. It's like outside of Charlevoix, just like in the old cool building that he's kind of restored, a farmhouse style place. And that's a tiny place if you want to go somewhere small that I think is doing something good. Trying to think if there's some other people that are, most of the guys that I'm into it, people have probably heard of, but that's one that people probably haven't heard of because I think he's only maybe 2 years old. Do you have any down your way or that you
around here? I don't know. It's hard for me if they, a lot of places I say small, or that, you say small and it's like, well, they're not really that small. Like to me, they don't seem small, but they could be places that nobody's ever heard of. There's a couple places that I really want to try out. Well, I like Urban Rest quite a bit in Ferndale. Not anywhere close to me, but I want to check out more from De Hops in Grand Rapids. There are places like when I go to Beer Fest, hopefully they'll have a Michigan Beer Fest, at least, 1 or 2 this year. But I like to, when I go to a festival, I like to go to the places that maybe I've heard a lot of great things about, or maybe that I've been following their social media. And I want to try their beer. I don't necessarily always go for the really big places. I try to go for maybe smaller places that I can't just get on a regular basis. So De Hops is one of those, like I said, Urban Rest. I'm trying to think of other places that I haven't mentioned before. Like, I mean, I always mention Ascension. They're in Novi. I don't think they're small by any means. Or I think that's one of the places around here that, if you get like, I'm going to Ann Arbor, what's a recommendation of a brewery? And they tell you like a brewery that's 45 minutes, then Ascension would be that one. Usually somebody's like, you got to visit Ascension. I'd like to go check out Brewery Faison in Detroit. They do a lot of, I want to say they do a lot of farmhouse style stuff. I can't really think of a whole lot right now off the top of my head. I'm sure I have a list somewhere of a lot of places that I want to try, but at the current moment, I'm not thinking of them for some reason. I know when I went up to Marquette last year, and I went up for the winter or the fall UP Beer Fest. Barrel and Beam is a small one that they get distribution. Yeah. They were doing self-distribution from Marquette down here quite a bit.
Yeah.
I really like their stuff. They're kind of out of my wheelhouse too, with doing a lot of the sours, a lot of the farmhousey kind of stuff, saisons, and I can't even think of the other style that satis. They did a sati that I really liked.
They had one at Summer Beer Fest that was just, I think it was a sati, and I just could not get enough of it.
Yeah.
I could not get enough 3-ounce pours. But yeah, no, I'm like you. I try to go to Beer Fest and find the things I can't find.
Yeah. You guys, so you did, I don't know if you did it last year because I didn't go, but the previous 2 years you did in Muskegon, they do Burning Foot, which is on the beach of Lake Michigan. Did you guys do that last year?
Yeah, that's a great festival.
That's a really cool one. I like that they mix the music, and it's on the beach. It's like the only time you can camp on the beach is that weekend or that Saturday night.
It's wild. It's also, I think, the only festival on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
I think this next year it's actually not on the beach because they have a construction project going on.
Oh, really? That stinks.
I know, but they said they'll be back on the beach. Now, I would definitely encourage people to go to that festival, though, because it's a ton of fun. And I feel like it's so unique. I think it'll be unique anyways because they're moving it like really close. It's still on the water, but it's not right on the beach. So. But anyways, we're always try to bring some stuff that hopefully people haven't had an opportunity to try. Some like taproom only beers at all festivals, really. Any major festival, especially Guild Fest or like a Burning Foot. If it's a really tiny thing, we might not be able to send something special out for it. But
yeah. Brett says, might be a long shot. Have you guys or anybody watching heard of Thirsty Dog Bourbon Barrel Wolver? I have not heard of that.
I have not either. Sean, I'm going to let you take over. I'm going to run and grab a follow-up beer.
All right.
I'm not getting behind here.
No pressure. All right. So we have Tyler says, Petoskey's Dark Knight Black IPA was really good, and I can't see what the rest is. I hope it comes back soon. Sorry, I moved you might notice if you watch the last live stream, I'm not like constantly looking up at the sky this time. I'm not constantly thinking. I moved my monitor right behind my camera, so it gives the illusion that I'm looking in the camera all the time, but sometimes I can't see what's right back there. Randy says, yes, this is purple. This is a purple beer, very purple. I was expecting it to be purple, but that's like shockingly purple. So are these Audio Technicas? They are. Audio Technica. Randy's suggestions are Witch's Hat for sure. That's one of the things that, when someone says a small brewery, me personally, because they've been, especially if someplace has a lot of distribution, I don't really think of those places as small for some reason. I know that they're still not, huge. But it just in my mind, when someone says a small brewery, I don't think of a small brewery as being Witch's Hat. But, in the grand scheme of things, they're pretty small and they're really good. If you're in South Lyon, if you're driving by Brighton, there's I would love to do like a Grand River kind of beer tour, I guess, because there's so many places just on Grand River or close to, maybe a few miles off Grand River. That's like an awesome one. Start in Detroit, go to Lansing, maybe a little bit beyond, because you can hit, I want to say like Batch is close to Grand River. There's a few other ones, but obviously, I always say Ascension, Witch's Hat. You can hit Old Nation's like right by Grand River. Ellison's right by Grand River. There's so many places that are right along Grand River. Randy also says Ferndale Project. I would have said Ferndale, but I consider them to be under Eastern Market, and I for some reason don't consider Eastern Market to be a small brewery, but they're not a big one either. But they have such a presence in the community. I feel like they do. Maybe it's just like an echo chamber of the things that I listen to. I still think that Eastern Market, they're a small brewery, but I feel like they have a lot of they just have a lot of ideas. They have big presence. So I mean, if you've been following them on Facebook, this whole shutdown, or at least for like a week, they were coming up with new businesses or new ventures all week. So they started like their pizza. I think they might even deliver pizza now out of the Eastern Market store. They started so many different ventures this last week or so last week that went really crazy. Rob's answering back about the Bourbon Barrel Wolver. And then Brett says that's what he's heard. Really looking to give that one a try. Just have to find a place that has it near him. All right, and I think you're all up to date.
All right. I saw a shout out to Witch's Hat. Those guys are great. I always like those guys. So I just I always rinse my glass, so I got to get the water out. So I just because I'm up north, I get a good supply of these guys short. This is an anniversary ale, and actually you can see like in the chair, boy, this reverse is hard. It's 14th, so it's 2 years old.
Oh, okay.
This year, actually, I think April, can't remember the date, but April is usually their anniversary party. Obviously, they had to cancel it, which really sucks. And I believe that they pushed that off to the fall. I was just looking it up. Yeah, October 17th. So those guys have been very good to us. I think it's cool when there's somebody that's a little bit bigger and more successful, and they don't put their nose up at new guys. So
yeah,
I've always been a fan. They kind of go off the wall sometimes for me. You know, I said I'm more of a 6-pack drinker, but that doesn't mean that I don't have some favorites. I was hoping, I thought I still had a Spruce Pilsner. That happens to be one of my favorite, like, intense beers from them, but.
Yeah, they seem like one of those places that you can, I've said this a few times on some of my videos, but every week you can go to your store and find a new Shorts beer, you know, almost every week.
I think literally they told me, because I know them pretty well, they were putting out, there might have been a year that they did it every week, but it might have been every other week. But even that's insane. Yeah. And then they were like, that's too much to me. So I think they've dialed it back a little bit. But the Anniversary Ale is a blood orange wheat wine with peppercorns, blood orange, and orange zest. And this, I want to say it's like 14%. So I might be sipping this and then taking it with me to dinner.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's got a beautiful color. So I kind of wanted to do this like Pilsner glass just because that orange hue comes through really nice.
Yeah, when you mentioned about doing this and bringing like a bottle to share, I had a Shorts batch 10,000 and I think 8,000 that I was kind of considering, but I think that 10,000 was like, I think that was the Brute, and it was a crazy high ABV, and I'm like, I'm good.
I think I have that too. I saw it in there, one of their batch ones. I think it was 10,000. I'm gonna do a quick Shorts Anniversary Ale 14.
We got Z Laraway saying, Sean, do you homebrew at all or ever thought about it? Yeah, I kind of covered this a little bit. I did homebrew a few batches here and there, nothing ever crazy. I always say, like, I'm going to get back into it. I'm going to do 1 gallon batches, because then I know I can drink through all that stuff. But you know, it's one of those things that you say that you'd like to do and you never get around to. If you watched last Friday, I actually drank a 10-year-old brown ale that I homebrewed 10 years ago, and it was not good.
I'll give a story. I almost pulled this out, but I mean, nobody can get it anywhere. It's kind of a personal thing. It was a homebrew thing, a barley wine that a friend of ours did. It was a recipe from an older friend that passed away from cancer about a year ago, and it might have been 2 years. Boy, time really flies. He was our first customer. Like, he came into our pub and he was like, man, I've been waiting for a brewery. He used to own a homebrew shop. Fred was his name. And he was like, man, I've been waiting for a brewery to open in Petoskey. Like, he lived in walkable distance to downtown, and he was just waiting for somebody. So he came in, like, we're sitting there painting, you know, a couple weeks before we open, painting things. Yeah, this guy walks in. He's like, hey, what can I help with? And I assumed he knew my business partner. So I was like, oh, you know, if you could paint this trim over here, that'd be great. So he's painting. I go to the bathroom or something. Ben comes in. He's like, he gives him another project. Ben thought I knew him. And then at some point we realized neither of us actually knew who this guy was. So we were like, who are you? Like, and he's like, I just really want to start drinking your beer. He's like, I've been waiting for a brewery to open. You guys, we had missed our deadline to open. He's like, anything I can do to help you get open. I was like, that's great. And then the day we announced we were going to open, he came down with his own vacuum cleaner and it was like vacuuming the hall, and like just the best guy. So he was an avid home brewer, made an awesome barley wine. And a friend of ours, a mutual friend, homebrewed it for his funeral, and we all have some bottles of that now aging in our fridges. So that's kind of cool. I saw that in there though when I was digging in the back of the fridge.
Whatever I can do to help you guys open sooner, let me know.
Mm-hmm. That was it. I don't know how he would have lived through this. All the pubs shut down. I mean, he had a good homebrew supply, but he was very social too. he loved coming out and spending time with people. So yeah. Cheers to Fred.
Cheers.
He was a guy because he would throw down, you'd be like, all right, let's do a tasting. Everybody bring your whatever's in the back of your fridge or whatever you've been aging. And then like, here comes in Fred with a 25-year-old Vesleterin. Like he'd gone to Belgium multiple times and he'd always squirrel a few extra away. And I'm like, wow, I'm drinking a beer that's almost as old as me. He brought in a 1979 Thomas Hardy. That was older than me, from England. And I was like, holy moly. So it tasted pretty bad at that old of a beer. But the fact that he had kept it was just amazing.
Yeah, I have a Grand Cru that I'm going to crack with a friend of mine when his daughter turns 10, because I think I bought it like a couple days before she was born, and it said it's a Avery Grand Cru, and it's like, you should age this 10 years. I'm like, all right, well, we'll age it 10 years. I think I have 4 bottles or some crazy amount.
Yeah, no, that's great. I had I'm kind of into metal music and or like progressive metal, symphonic, more melodic type metal music, but most of that comes out of Europe, and a lot of those bands don't ever tour over here. So a few years ago, there was a band. Well, it's a guy that like writes. He calls them rock operas, and he gets people from other bands to play. Aaron Anthony Lucas, and his project's called Arion, and he was performing. It was 15, 20 years of his. It may have been 20 years of his album Into the Electric Castle. So it never performed live before because it's like a project. He got, I want to say, 80% of the original cast to come sing it. It was a 1 weekend thing in like Amsterdam. So we went over there, but we stayed in Belgium and went to breweries and stuff, and stopped at Vesleterin. And it turned out like, cause I didn't really, we were going for the concert, but then I was like, we're going to be over there. We should look for, probably the best beer in the world. That's funny because they have like a sign that says that. Yeah, which is funny. But anyway, so we're like, we're staying near there. We should go check it out. Well, of course, I looked it up, and it's so hard to get that now they have like, you have to sign up for slots of when you can come pick it up, but usually you can always taste it in the cafe. At least to get a taste. So it turned out that was like that was like their week off for the year. I was like, no way. I was like, well, let's drive out there and check it out. So we drove out there, took pictures of it. And then I had noticed online there was like pickup times for people that had reserved it. So I went over and we went at a pickup time, and there's nobody out there, but there's like a sign that's like, go in here to pick up. So I went in and I was like, there's a monk there, and I'm like, oh man, what do I like? Does he speak English? I was like, I'm from the U.S. I was like, I have a small brewery. Like, I kind of screwed this up. I don't have a pickup time. He's like, yeah, we got a pallet of 6-pack since the cafe's closed. He's like, I'll sell you a 6-pack. I couldn't get a case, but so he sold me a 6-pack. And then we all drank. I was over there with a cousin of mine and my wife. We all had one. So we split 2. I got 4 back. So I got those sitting and aging. So I'm thinking like maybe give those 10 years and see.
Yeah.
But it was quite the thing. Like, my cousin's like, you just like, I was like, it's always free to ask, right? So I was like, show up, we give it a shot.
Worst they can do is say no.
Yeah, exactly. So it paid off. We got ourselves a 6-pack and got some of it back even. So pretty exciting. It's worth a journey if you can make a journey to Belgium, because it's an adventure. I've been there twice and loved both times. So I see someone's calling out the Rochefort 10, and that's a little more readily available, and that is also phenomenal beer. One of my absolute favorite of that style. So
Yeah, Rob's a big Belgian fan, and when we do these live streams, I'll say, "Hey, is there anything you want to see?" And he's always kicking out these Belgian beers, and I'm like, I can't get, I don't know where to get that.
Yeah. Have you had Rochefort, Tim?
I have not. I
Dark,
like Belgians, but I'm not like really well versed
okay.
in a lot of different Belgians.
It's kind of like that Belgian dark strong ale. When you get into those categories, I look at it and there's always like kind of multiple terms people use.
Yeah.
Kind of like a Belgian dark strong is how I categorize that. And those ones that are like a deep, deep brown and have like a predominant like fruity yeastiness, but then there's like so much more going on in the malt finish and like really hang on your tongue. So honestly, Belgians are one of the early things that I got into in beer because it was an interesting journey into it. I really got into beer because I was into baking and I was into like coffee and like the finer points of coffee, and even got into roasting coffee a little at a younger age, and then was like, oh, beer. Like there's like real things going on here. It's not just this mass produced thing. And so I really jumped into it for the flavors, and I had an early trip. My first trip to Belgium was too early. It was the problem. It was before I was really a beer drinker. I went with some cousins of mine, and that was a really unique opportunity as well. And so I tried a bunch of it. I was 19, so I was not like a rebel, so I hadn't been drinking a bunch of beer. I had some beer here or there, but I go to Belgium and it was like, oh, all right, every day we're going to like all day long hitting up beer. You'd go to the grocery store, there'd be like 20,000 varieties of beer you'd never heard of. It was like, this is my
it's a little
favorite,
paralyzing.
Yeah, my favorite story ever. We went to this, we were staying, of course, it was before Airbnb, but there was some like website that my cousin found. You just like rent someone's house. Maybe like almost like couch surfing, but like it was like there wasn't a person staying there. They just rented out their house, but it was like in the middle of nowhere. Like we go to this town, like they only speak French. Like it was not near a big city at all. So there was like one little market. We went to the market and we were getting food because we were staying there for a week, so we were gonna get some for the house, and we had like half our cart was beer, half of it was food. And then we go to the checkout. We're like, oh, they're going to be like these American tourists. They're just going to get wasted on beer. And we look at the guy next to us. His whole cart was beer. And we went from feeling like bad tourists to like inadequate. Like we didn't get enough beer. We should go back and get more beer.
Right.
It was quite the story. Do you like to travel, or do you get any travel in? That's like my pastime was like what I save up to do is go on trips basically. So
I don't travel a whole lot. Like mostly me and my family, we go to, we'll go to Florida usually at least once a year. Of course, whenever we go anywhere, it's always like, hey, what breweries can we go to? And I'm usually like outvoted on that. I did go to Hungary last October and checked out. It was kind of cool because we went to Budapest for a few days, and then I went with my parents and my sister. We went to Budapest for a few days at the end of the trip, and then the beginning of the trip, we went to this small town that my dad's from, and it's like the second largest city in Hungary, but it's only like 80,000 people, because Budapest is like, I think it's like 1 million or 2 million people, and then this city's like 80 grand, and that's the second. So they had a lot of like local stuff that was kind of what you would get here if you just like, hey, I want a beer. Somebody just give you a Bud Light or, maybe like a little bit stronger flavored Pilsner, and that's pretty much what they had there. We got lucky. There was a place that was, I think it was supposed to be like a Belgian kind of restaurant, so to speak, and they had some decent beer there. But most of the time at the beginning of the trip was drinking a lot of Pilsners that all tasted very similar to each other. But then going to Budapest, I got a chance to check out this place called, what is it called now? I don't even remember Magno Brew Pub or Brew House or whatever it was called. And they did a lot of cool stuff. They did this. They had a beer. It was a stout, and it reminded me a lot of that Evil Twin Big Ass Money. I don't know if you've had that or you've seen that,
No,
but they ended up brewing it with they threw a bunch of pizza in it and money. So it has like a spicy pepperoni kind of flavor. And that's what this had. It was called something about don't forget the pepperonis or something. It was this like milk stout. So it was a sweet stout, but it had this like spicy pepperoni kind of finish on it. And that was just really interesting. And I went to Slovakia for a day and checked out this place called Be Unorthodox. And they did their own beer, and I picked up and brought a few back with me. They were like really interesting beers. Like the IPAs that they had, they were all like really West Coasty style IPAs. And just really interesting. A lot of sours, a lot of just kind of, like the same kind of IPAs that we would have been like really huge here 5 or 10 years ago. They had in Slovakia, but their beers are really, really pretty good too. I had one, I don't remember what it was called, but it was called, it was like a play on Billy Idol, and on the label was the Night King from Game of Thrones, but it was Billy Idol's face on it. It was just really interesting. I think I might still even have the label, but it was good. I just wish I had been able to spend more time in Budapest, being able to go to a couple different places, but it was really interesting. But if I go to Florida, if I go to Chicago, if I go to Boston, I've been a few places, and there's always such a bustling scene, almost everywhere you go, that it's really interesting to be able to try these different beers from places that, you'll never get a chance to try if you just, stick to what you can get here. So it's always really interesting.
Finding whatever the local, even that's something I find interesting, even if it's the, like you said, they make a lot of, in Hungary, you're making a lot of Pilsners and whatnot, but finding how they interpret that locally. I mean, sometimes it's the subtleties of it, but it's still kind of refreshing, and seeing the culture that goes along with it and the food that goes along with it. I mean, that's just what I love about traveling for sure.
Yeah, I can remember the brands, these brands, like there was one, it was called Soproni, and it was like every place driving on the roads, every little village that you'd come up to, like they'd have a corner bar that had this big Soproni sign, like, hey, we might not have a lot of food here, but we got Soproni. Like anytime you want to get Soproni, you know where to stop, because it's like Budweiser here, like every time you go someplace, it'd be like those old school bars that had like the Pepsi like vinyl sign or the Coca-Cola, and they would always be like this round green logo. I can still remember it, like being there yesterday. It'd be Soproni, every place. It turned out being not so bad. That was pretty good. The other one was called Borsodi, and I didn't really like them because I tried to they had a couple different styles. They'd have like Borsodi dark or something, and you'd be like, oh, okay, cool. And it'd be like the same, really very similar beer, but just like a little bit darker and not that great, unfortunately.
Bummer. Well,
what can you do?
Traveling's fun, and it definitely. John Farner says, this ESB sucks. Not sure where it's from. Stout on deck. Too bad. We actually make an ESB, again, an underappreciated style.
Yeah.
But we quit calling it ESB because people just don't, the style name almost detracts from the value of the beer. And it's called Out of the Silent Planet. And it's a reference to or we just call it Silent Planet. It's a reference to the C.S. Lewis book. A lot of people don't know it. It's a smaller bit that he did, but we did a little research. I'm part of a festival here in Petoskey, C.S. Lewis Festival. And so I did a little research, like what type of beers might have been in the pubs when C.S. Lewis was writing. And if people aren't familiar, I'm sure you've heard of Chronicles of Narnia. That's his big series. But just found the hop styles, like just really classic hops, Brewer's Gold, Buggle, those type of things that would have been in use back then. And and we kind of developed something around that idea of what maybe was C.S. Lewis drinking in the pubs. Like, we don't know exactly. We know some of the pubs he drank at. There's not a ton of information on the details of the beers that would have been in those pubs, but that's such a traditional style. So I love that beer, but we tried to do market releases, and we have a cool can for it, and just have not been able to get a ton of traction. But we still do it in our pub every year because it's tasty.
I feel like the name kind of betrays it a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
ESB, extra special bitter, right? And you're like, oh, it's going to be like an IPA. And somebody goes and they get it, and they're like, oh, this isn't what I thought I was getting.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Or someone that would legitimately probably like it is scared away because of the bitter in the name.
Right.
And it's not. It's extra specially bitter. It's like it should be called
it's like a balance, right? It's a balance between the malt and the hop.
Extra special balance is what it should be called. It's a good balance between malt and hop. Yeah, ours is like very like caramely colored, you know, and features a lot of those classic hops. So it's a fun one. But yeah, we probably won't do large market releases anymore, but it's more of something special to us, and we do it in our pub. We'll probably always can a little bit for our pub release, and we already have artwork and stuff. So
I'll keep an eye open for it, because hopefully we'll get it down here. I'm not a huge ESB fan. Like, that's not, and it's probably more because I've just never had a whole lot of them, because I think it's a style that it's kind of fallen out of favor. You know, everybody does IPAs now. You might get a pale ale once in a great while, obviously a hazy or a New England style. But, you know, like those, I don't know, I feel like a brown is kind of a style that not a lot of places do. ESB for sure. Hefeweizens, you know, you kind of might get one here or there, but you don't get a whole lot. Like, it's just not one of the beer styles that everybody loses their mind over. So you got to kind of think, is it worth the time for somebody to release a beer if they know it's not going to do super well, you know?
That's the thing. Like I say, we definitely try to do things we care about, are passionate about, but at the end of the day, if it's just going to sit there and we can't sell it, then we also have to kind of cut our losses and say, hey. Now, a good thing that we can do is we have a 1-barrel pub system, so we can make 2 kegs of something, you know, and that might be the right amount for our market of a style like that. Like, hey, we're going to do a 2 keg release for this season in the fall, and then go from there.
I was going to ask you a question. Yeah. And I totally spaced out on what it was.
And I think
it was going to be along the line of saying, you know, what does a beer have to sell, especially if it's like a taproom release only? What does a beer have to sell for you guys to consider it a success?
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, so this is a plus and negative of our 1-barrel system. Now that we're a bigger place, if we make 2 kegs, almost anything will sell out at 2 kegs in a big spot. And then we don't really know, did people like it, or did they just all have a glass of it?
Yeah.
So that's something we're talking a lot about, upgrading that pub system here in the next year or so that we can make a little bit bigger test batches. And we'll do double or triple batches on that system. That's our original system. And we've done over 1,000 brews on it. But we'll do double, triple batches, so we get 6 kegs maybe or something. And I think if it's because we're in such a seasonal area, it kind of depends on the time of year. In the summer, if you could sell through, maybe we made 6 kegs, you sell through it, that might not mean much. If you sell through 6 kegs in a month in the off season, people probably really like that. Right. Again, we have like up to 24 taps on it at a time. So if you're selling 6 kegs of one beer in a month in the off season, that beer is doing well, you know?
Yeah.
So we really spread the load, and usually we see our core beers are the leaders all the time. And then if we see a seasonal or a one-off thing running like that, that's a good indication that it's the right thing. We should make more of it.
All right, I'm going to flash our social media stuff up here.
Absolutely.
If anybody wants to get a hold of us, either you or myself, they should probably know where to find me if they're watching this on YouTube. But I'm available at Draft Therapy on YouTube and Draft_Therapy on Instagram and Twitter. And then you're blocked off from me, so I have to lean over.
No, I can see it. We got Beard's Brewery on Facebook. That's our major channel, or Beard's Brewery on Instagram. We do a lot with those. We just started our What's Your Craft show on YouTube. So that one, we don't even have a dedicated link yet. So if you Google or search on YouTube for What's Your Craft, you should be able to find it. Those are longer things, but we're also we're working on some smaller snippets. Like we made a music video for the band we interviewed. That's like a 4-minute thing. So that's, check us out. We'd appreciate it. And please, if you have questions from here, if you're looking for specific products, just email us info@Beard's Brewery or sales@Beard's Brewery, or Facebook message us, tag us on Instagram. We'll respond to you and help you find our beer. Looks like maybe we got a last question up here as well.
Yep, I'm going to flip right over to that. Last question from Z Laraway is, I think this is going to be a question for both of us. What's going to be the trendy beer style in 2020? Thoughts on low-calorie craft beer?
Boy, this is such a topic. Predicting trends is difficult.
Yeah.
I sat here and I thought a lot. I mean, obviously we've seen seltzers go crazy, and I was like, what is the appeal, right? But as a drinker myself, who also works really hard and has a lot of, like, one guy was saying earlier, I'm drinking water because I'm still at work. And I take my job pretty seriously, even though it's beer. And so I don't just drink all day. But I am very interested, and we're developing more like low ABV beers. And I think NA is going to grow, because I think you're starting to see that category starting to be able to get the real flavor of beer without all the alcohol, where in the past it was just a totally horrible taste compared to what a full beer was. So, I mean, to me, something that the two sides of it too, like you talked very early on about, like feeling okay the next day, right? Like where you don't want to get burnt out on the craft because you drank too much. So to me, like that, the sweet spot is we're working on like a 2.5% hoppy beer. This is, I guess, announcing that kind of, where hopefully this summer, if things get kicking it up again, it's like a half version of our Oh, the Citranity. And so that's already kind of a session. It's usually like 5%, which is kind of sessionable for an IPA, but we're cutting it back to about 2.5 and just really punching the hop. And the experiments of that have been awesome. So that's something I think you're going to see a lot, especially among the guy that's in it for beer. Like they don't want to switch to seltzer because they like the hop flavor. They like that malt. But I think having a 2.5%, which is also just by nature going to be lower calorie as well, because there's less grain, less alcohol, that all adds to the calorie. So I think that's going to be a trend, but I'm the first to tell you predicting the future is impossible. I never would have called seltzered. So, don't take it to the bank on that one.
Yeah, I think I would love to see Pilsners really kind of take off this summer. I know that, reading a lot of stuff from brewers that do New England styles and hazies being a big, huge thing in the beer space. A lot of brewers, the brewer's style is like a Pilsner. That's one that they like to do and one that they like to drink. I was kind of put off by Pilsners for a while, and then having and maybe it was just not having really good ones. I would love to see Pilsners take off, but I don't know if this is the year for it. I would kind of piggyback on your thoughts about low calorie. I personally, I've reviewed a couple doing obviously Lighthearted from Bell's, and New Holland did Light Point. And I think I may have done one. It might have been more like a low carb but high ABV beer from Crankers, which I really enjoyed. That was called Keto IPA. I think that we're probably going to see a lot more low ABV beers. I don't know if the really hardcore enthusiasts are going to buy into it. I think that, I hate to say it, but I feel like seltzers are kind of an indication that sometimes what the hardcore enthusiasts want isn't necessarily what's going to make the brewers money. And that's ultimately, you got to keep your business going. I mean, that's what everybody's trying to do. Do what you love, and maybe do these seltzers and these low ABV beers on the side, and then do the craft projects that you really want to do with the barrel aged stuff or the New England style stuff. I would like to see. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I think the low ABV, we're going to see more and more and more and more. And I'd like to do, when you guys put yours out, I'd love to try it. I'd love to do like a roundup with all the Michigan low ABV beers, because I think there's going to be a lot come this summer and maybe even late summer. I think they'll sell really well. I just don't know if the fans will be really into it. It's just I guess it's a matter of time. It's hard to really, like you said, it's hard to predict trends. It's hard to
predict.
Yeah, it's hard to call stuff. I like when I hear that something's becoming a trend, and like we were talking about earlier about festivals, seeing all the places that show up with these new styles, and you try it and you're like, oh, I don't know, it's kind of sketchy. And then seeing them redo and reformulate and redistribute that same style 6 to 8 months later, and it's a totally different beer, or they may have named it something else, but it's like the same style, and you could tell, that they had this particular style in mind when they did it initially, but they, I feel like when New England's did that first summer beer fest in Ypsi, there were so many places that had a New England style, and you tried it and you're like, yeah, this isn't what I was expecting it to be. But then, they come back strong, and 6 to 8 months later, these same breweries that you tried their New England style, and it's like, this is not what the style is supposed to be, which is totally undefined. And you come back and you're like, well, this is a really good beer. They figured it out. They cracked the code on that. So trends are hard to predict. I'd like to see places veer away from seltzers, but if we see more seltzers, then guess that's a good indication that they're selling really well.
Without going too much longer, you had a lot of good points there. I think that's another thing that I feel like it's been harder for us. We're a small brewery, so we should maybe be really nimble and throw something out. But it's also been something that's been against our ethos to throw something out that we haven't thought through. I mean, we've been talking about low ABV beer for the last year and a half. I mean, we saw some of the early trends, but we're just getting to a product that we're happy with, So for us, it's really about that iterative process and developing it to something we care about. Pilsners, I see Pilsners forever as a thing. But I think that, again, it's something we love to drink. It's something we found we're working on a Kolsch for our pub, but to distribute it, honestly, the average consumer is going to look at the price difference and say, why am I buying the craft version, right? We can make a good Kolsch or a good Pilsner, but if we're a few percent more craft, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Budweiser isn't making a good lager, right? I mean, they're excellent at making the same thing over and over again. We might be able to make something that tastes similar, but a little bit more unique, but are you going to pay that much more for it? That's the hard part when you get into those styles. We love them too, and we want to make more of them, but they're probably always going to be more pub release, because that's where we can afford to make them, so to speak. When you get to the market, you got to be really cost competitive to make it run. Yeah.
That's the name of the game. It all comes down to a bottom line is the bottom line. You got to stay in the black to make sure that you're still able to do, like I said, those kind of projects that you want to be able to do.
But yeah, that's our bottom line, and the consumer doesn't want to spend the extra dollars on it. So, I mean, everybody's concerned about the price a little bit. So, well, Sean, this has been amazing. I think when we talked originally, we said, hey, maybe half hour, 45 minutes. I see the counter rolling on 2 hours, boy. But this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate getting going with you on this and taking the time. And Sean, for you guys who don't know, he put the technical together. I'm still learning a lot of this, so appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a I don't know. I was gonna say a gift and a curse putting, liking this kind of stuff, because you get so into the weeds about it sometimes. But yeah, I just, big thanks to Peter, big thanks to Beards. Peter actually reached out to me to kind of get this going. I think once the review went up for the Dogman, he reached out and said he wanted to kind of do a thing like that. Like you said, 30 minutes to 45 minutes. I'm glad that you're okay that we went over. It seems to be the way that this goes.
Hey, when you're drinking good beer with good company, hey, there's no time limit, right?
Right. Yeah. It's going to keep well until you fall asleep or.
Well, Facebook told me I can't go over 8 hours without permissions, but.
Oh, is that one solid stream?
Yeah. I was like, who's doing an 8-hour stream, man?
I said on the last live stream, you should just set up like a charity thing and just go like see how long you can go. See if you can go like 24 hours just drinking all these beers and falling off your chair at the end of the time. And
speaking of charity, support your local musicians in any way you can, because man, it's a hard slog for them. We bring a lot of pub entertainment in, but we had no choice but to cancel because we can't be open. So if you guys know local musicians that you can support in any way, please do.
And last comment from Z Laroy says, thanks for taking the question. Well, I can't see what it says. Love your channel and hope to visit Beards when I'm back in Michigan. Take care and stay safe. And that's the big thing. Everybody stay safe out there. Be careful. If you can stay away from people and not lose your mind, that's probably the best thing to do right now. One last thing I wanted to say just about on the draft therapy front, like Randy suggested earlier in chat about coming on and doing a big live stream and doing an actual virtual bottle share with a few people. Hit me up at Sean at Draft Therapy. Give me your information. If you're able to join a stream like this, I would really love to do it. If you've never commented on a video before, it's going to be hard for me to say, yeah, come on, because I just want to make sure that we're staying within the guidelines and being clean and making sure we're not stepping over any bounds. But hit me up at Sean at drafttherapy.com. And we'll get a stream together. This is a lot of fun. I talked to Dave Seacott from Brew Detroit. I think it was last week, and it's kind of the same thing. You get to come on and talk to this unfortunate chain of events that have brought us to this whole telecommuting and video call era. That part stinks, but being able to kind of connect, the plan of me when I started this was I want to capture the stories. I want to go to places. Well, on the schedule that I have, it's not really feasible for me to go so many places. So it's awesome that I got to talk to you. I mean, you're in Petoskey. That's a good, probably 4 hours away from me. Yeah. And we could just jump on a call and kind of go over the specifics, pretty quickly and set this up. And we talked initially on Saturday or Sunday, right?
Yeah, it was not long ago.
Yeah, and just
got it happening.
Turned it around.
Figure out the Facebook side yet. I posted the link, so hopefully we got some people. I was keeping an eye. I didn't get comments, but maybe we'll do another one in the future. We get that side figured out.
Yeah, I would be totally down for it, for sure. If we just have to do a Facebook exclusive kind of thing and just go on there, that'd be fine too. I have no problem with that.
Cool.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Peter. Thanks everybody for watching. Like I say, I already drank my beer, but, drink craft beer, support your local breweries. And most importantly, Peter's going to drink for me. Don't forget to treat yourself to a little draft therapy. Stay safe, stay sane. And thanks everybody for watching. Thanks, Peter.
Cheers.
Cheers, everybody.